He doesn't chase her. He doesn't flood her phone with messages. He doesn't try to impress her with stories or big gestures. He just exists in the conversation. Steady, unbothered, present, and somehow she leans in. Not because of what he does, not because of how he looks or what he owns, but because of something far more subtle. Something most men completely miss. Something so ordinary sounding that most people scroll right past it without a second thought. 2 words. Just 2 simple words. Dropped at exactly the right moment. And everything shifts. She feels something she can't quite explain. Something that feels different from every other interaction she's had. There's no pressure. No performance. No urgency trying to pull her somewhere she's not ready to go. She just feels safe. Curious. Drawn in. And here's the thing about that. That feeling doesn't happen by accident. It's not luck. It's not natural charm that some men are born with and others aren't. It's language. Specifically, it's 2 phrases that older men have quietly figured out, phrases that younger men almost never use because they don't understand what they actually signal. Most men think attraction is built through action, through doing more, saying more, trying harder. But what if the opposite is true? What if attraction deepens when you stop performing and start simply holding space? That's what this is about. Not pick-up lines. Not clever tricks. Not psychological games designed to confuse or manipulate. This is about understanding how certain words create emotional environments, and why the right environment pulls a woman in far more powerfully than any amount of effort ever could. So before we go any deeper, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched a man say very little, and somehow it hit harder than anything else in the room? You couldn't explain it. He wasn't loud. He wasn't pushing anything. But something about the way he held himself, the way he responded, made everything feel different. That's not magic. That's emotional calibration. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. Why women read between the lines. Here's something most men don't realize. Women are constantly scanning. Not consciously, not deliberately, but emotionally. Every interaction carries a signal, and they are reading those signals the entire time. It's not about what you say. It's about what your words reveal about who you are underneath the surface. When a man is desperate, his language shows it. When a man is emotionally unsteady, his words give him away. When a man needs validation, his sentences lean forward too far, trying too hard, explaining too much, filling every silence like silence itself is a threat. Women feel all of this, even when they can't articulate it. And older men, the ones who have been through enough to stop performing, they've learned something quiet and powerful. They've learned that emotional safety is more attractive than charm. That self-control signals more than confidence ever could through words alone. Think about what a woman is actually looking for beneath the surface. She's not just looking for someone interesting. She's looking for someone she can trust with her emotional world. Someone who won't panic when things get complicated. Someone who doesn't need her to manage their feelings on top of managing her own. That's a rare thing. And when she finds it, she leans in. Older men understand this without even thinking about it anymore. They've stopped trying to win her attention. They've stopped reacting. They've learned to regulate the pace of connection rather than rush it. And their language, the words they choose, carries all of their inner stability in a way that's almost invisible. Language becomes the tool, not to impress, not to perform, but to demonstrate something real, something that younger men rarely carry yet. That thing is emotional control. And the 2 words that carry it most quietly, most powerfully, are the ones we are about to break down. Word 1. Take your time. Let's start with the first phrase. Simple. Clean. Almost forgettable if you don't understand what it actually does. Take your time. 3 words. But for the purpose of this script, we'll count this as the first of 2 core phrases because the impact is singular. It sends one very specific emotional signal. And that signal is this: I am not desperate for your answer. Think about when a woman hesitates. She doesn't reply quickly. She seems unsure. Maybe she's pulling back slightly, not as warm as she was before. Maybe she cancelled something and offered a vague explanation. What does most men do in that moment? They push. They follow up. They ask again. They over-explain why it would be great. They send another message. And another. Each message thinking it's helping, but each message actually screaming one thing louder and louder: I need this. I need you to respond. I need your approval. And she feels that need. It makes her pull back further. Now imagine the man who does nothing like that. She hesitates. She delays. She seems unsure. And he simply says, take your time. Just that. Nothing else. What does she feel in that moment? Immediately, the pressure drops. There's no weight on her shoulders. No invisible countdown. No performance expected. And suddenly she doesn't feel managed, she feels respected. That phrase signals something her nervous system responds to before her mind even processes it. It says, this man has other things going on. This man is not sitting here waiting for me to save him with a response. This man has options, patience, and self-respect. That's not passivity. That's abundance. And abundance is deeply attractive. The mistake men make is believing that pushing creates momentum. That if you just stay present enough, follow up enough, remind her enough, she'll eventually come around. But pressure doesn't build attraction. Pressure builds resistance. Space does something different. Space creates curiosity. When she's not being pulled towards something, she starts moving toward it on her own. And that movement, the one that comes from her, not from your effort, is the beginning of real attraction. Take your time creates that space in a single breath. It's calm. It's confident. It's the language of a man who doesn't need the outcome to go a specific way to feel okay about himself. And that is exactly what she's been looking for. Word 2, I understand. Now let's talk about the second phrase. And this one is even quieter than the first. Even more overlooked. Even more powerful when placed correctly. I understand. 2 words. That's it. But what those 2 words communicate beneath the surface is something that most men spend years failing to deliver, and it has nothing to do with intelligence, looks, or even effort. It communicates emotional presence without emotional overinvestment. Here's the situation. She's having a hard day. Or she's dealing with something complicated, work stress, family tension, personal doubt. She shares it with you. Maybe she's not even looking for advice. Maybe she just needed to say it out loud. What does most men do? They immediately try to fix it. They offer solutions. They explain what she should do. They share a story about how they handled something similar. They start mapping out the problem like it's a puzzle that needs solving, because they genuinely want to help. And that intention is good. But the effect? It misses. Because what she needed in that moment wasn't a solution. She needed to feel heard. When a man jumps straight into problem solving, what he's actually communicating, without knowing it, is, your feelings are a problem I need to resolve so we can move on. And she feels that. It makes her feel like a burden. Or like her emotional experience is being rushed past. Now imagine the man who does something different. She shares something difficult, something raw, something that took a little courage to say. And he looks at her, or responds, with just this, "I understand." And then he holds that. He doesn't rush past it. He doesn't pivot to advice. He doesn't make it about himself. He simply acknowledges what she's experiencing and stays present in that acknowledgement. What happens in that moment? She exhales. Emotionally, she relaxes. Because she wasn't being redirected. She wasn't being fixed. She was simply being seen. And being seen, genuinely seen, is one of the most rare and powerful experiences a person can have in a conversation. The psychology behind being seen here is why this matters so deeply from a psychological standpoint. Most people spend their lives managing how they are perceived, filtering themselves, presenting the version of themselves that seems most acceptable. It takes energy. It creates a kind of emotional armor that very few people ever get to take off. When a woman shares something vulnerable, something real, she's momentarily lowering that armor. She's testing, even if unconsciously, whether this person can handle what's underneath. If you rush past it, offer quick solutions, or make her feel like her feelings are inconvenient, the armor goes back up. And it goes up higher than before. Because now she knows this isn't a safe place to be real. But if you stay, if you acknowledge without trying to reshape or redirect, if you simply say, "I understand," and mean it, something opens. She feels like this might actually be a person she can trust. Not just to be charming in easy moments, but to be present in hard ones. And trust, in the emotional world of a woman, is the foundation that everything else gets built on. Attraction without trust is just surface tension. It doesn't hold. But attraction that grows inside a bed of emotional safety, that deepens. That becomes something she starts to protect. I understand is how you build that. Quietly, steadily, without performing. This is where older men have a genuine advantage. Not because they are smarter, but because they've been through enough pain, enough failed conversations, enough moments where they said the wrong thing and watched someone shut down to finally understand what actually works. They stopped talking so much. They started listening more. And in the listening, they found the power of two small words that younger men almost always underestimate. What both phrases have in common. Now step back for a moment. Look at both phrases together. Take your time. I understand. What do they share? They both reduce pressure. They both remove urgency. They both create emotional friction instead of adding stimulation. They are not exciting phrases. They are not clever phrases. They won't make anyone laugh or gasp. But they do something more important than all of that. They create space. And in that space, something remarkable happens. She stops evaluating and starts feeling. She stops performing and starts opening. The interaction shifts, quietly, slowly, from two people trying to manage impressions to two people actually connecting. Most men think attraction is built through stimulation, through excitement and tension and unpredictability. And those things have their place. But underneath all of that, the deeper current, the one that determines whether she stays or leaves, is comfort. Safety. The sense that she doesn't have to protect herself from you. When she doesn't feel managed, she stops being guarded. When she stops being guarded, she starts being curious. And curiosity is the first real signal that attraction is forming. Both of these phrases do exactly that. Not by impressing her. Not by winning her over. But by quietly removing the things that were keeping her walls up in the first place. That's the shift. From performance to connection. From effort to presence. and it starts with language so simple that most men dismiss it entirely. The mistake most men make. Let's be honest about something. Because this is where most men lose her, and they don't even know it's happening. Over-texting. Over-explaining. Over-pursuing. These are the 3 patterns that kill attraction faster than almost anything else. And the painful part? They usually come from a good place. From genuine interest. From wanting to show effort, wanting to demonstrate that she matters. But here's what those patterns actually communicate beneath the surface. Desperation. Emotional neediness. A man who doesn't trust the connection unless he's constantly reinforcing it. When you text 5 times without a response, you're not showing interest. You're showing anxiety. When you over-explain yourself, justifying, defending, elaborating on things that didn't need elaboration, you're not clarifying. You're seeking reassurance. When you pursue too hard and too fast, you're not being romantic. You're creating pressure that makes her want to pull back just to breathe. The worst part? Most men genuinely believe this effort is attractive. They think they are doing the right thing. They've been told that showing up, putting in the work, making her feel special, that's how you win her over. But there's a critical difference between showing genuine investment and performing neediness disguised as effort. One is stable and grounded. The other is anxious and reactive. Women feel the difference immediately, even when they can't put it into words. And once they feel the anxiety underneath the effort, something closes inside them, quietly, almost automatically, and the distance begins. This is why the 2 phrases matter so much. They are not just words. They are the opposite of all of that. They are proof that you're not anxious, that you're not rushing, that you don't need this interaction to go a specific way to feel okay. And that proof, communicated in 5 words total, does more for attraction than 100 carefully crafted messages ever could. What she does when the pressure disappears. Here's where things get genuinely interesting. And this is the part that most men never get to see, because they never stop pushing long enough to find out. When you remove pressure from an interaction, she starts moving toward you. Not because you did something clever. Not because you said the perfect thing. But because the emotional environment you created made her feel safe enough to actually want to close the distance herself. Think about that for a moment. That's a completely different dynamic than what most men are operating in. Most men are trying to pull her toward them, trying to create momentum through sheer effort, constantly working the angle, looking for the right move to make next. But the man who drops the pressure, who says take your time and means it, who responds to her emotional complexity with I understand and then stays quiet. She starts doing something she almost never does with anxious men. She starts investing. She replies when she didn't have to. She opens a little more than she planned to. She brings up the conversation again, not because she was asked, but because she actually wanted to. She starts thinking about him not because he demanded her attention, but because he left enough space for her curiosity to grow into something real. This is the hidden dynamic that older men understand and younger men rarely believe until they experience it themselves. Calm language reads as confidence. And confidence, not performed confidence, not loud confidence, but the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't need external validation, is one of the most magnetic things a woman can encounter. When he's not trying to win, she starts wondering why. She starts paying attention differently. The mystery deepens not because he's being secretive or playing games, but because he genuinely isn't performing for her approval. And that is rare enough to be fascinating. From tension to ease. Let's trace the emotional journey that happens when these words are used correctly. Because attraction isn't a single moment, it's a progression. And understanding the stages helps you see exactly where these phrases create their impact. It starts with tension. In most early interactions, there's a low level of emotional friction. Both people are testing, evaluating, trying to figure out what kind of person they are dealing with. This is normal. But most men make the mistake of adding to that tension through urgency, through overeagerness, through behavior that screams, "I need this to work." When you say, "Take your time," in the right moment, something immediate happens. The tension drops. Her shoulders, metaphorically, lower. The interaction stops feeling like an evaluation and starts feeling like a conversation. That shift is everything. From tension, you move into ease. And ease is where real communication happens. Where she says things she didn't plan to say. Where the interaction moves beyond surface level into something with actual emotional weight. And "I understand," used in that space of ease, moves things further. From ease into comfort. From comfort into trust. From trust into genuine emotional attachment. It's a slow progression. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel like a movie moment. But it's real. And real is what lasts. When calm converts to connection. There's a word that comes up in psychology, co-regulation. It refers to the way one person's emotional state can calm or excite the nervous system of another person they are interacting with. When you're anxious in a conversation, she feels that anxiety. When you're rushed, she feels the rush. When you're needy, she absorbs that need, and it makes her uncomfortable, even if she can't explain exactly why. But when you're calm, genuinely, internally calm, she feels that too. And her nervous system responds to it. She relaxes. She stops scanning for threats. She stops managing the emotional temperature of the interaction and starts actually existing inside it. This is what calm language does. It's not just a strategy. It's an emotional broadcast. And "take your time" and "I understand" said without desperation, without subtext, without hidden agenda, send that broadcast clearly. She doesn't just hear the words. She feels what the words come from. And what they come from, in the mouth of a man who genuinely means them, is a settled, steady inner world. A world she doesn't have to take care of. A world she can simply be near without it requiring emotional labor. That is genuinely rare. And rare things attract attention. Real moments, real application. Let's bring this down to earth. Because theory only goes so far. She cancels plans last minute. No real explanation. Just a short message saying she can't make it. Most men react. They feel the rejection and let it leak into their response. Maybe they say it's fine, but the tone betrays them. Maybe they push for a reschedule immediately, showing that they can't sit with the uncertainty. Maybe they say nothing, but go cold in a way she can feel. The older man, the one who understands what these phrases actually do, responds differently. "Take your time. Let me know when it works better for you." That's it. Clean. Warm but unbothered. No pressure. No sulking. No performance of being okay while clearly not being okay. And what does she feel? First, relief. She expected friction and got none. Then something else, a quiet respect. And then, if she had any doubt about whether she wanted to see him, that doubt starts tilting the other way. Because men who respond like that are rare. And rare things stay on her mind. Now let's try the second phrase. She tells him something personal. Something she's been carrying. Something complicated, maybe about her family, her work, a situation she doesn't know how to navigate. She's not asking for solutions. She just said it. Most men immediately start building toward an answer. Offering perspective. Telling her what they would do. Recounting a similar story to show they get it. The older man says, "I understand." And then he waits. He doesn't rush past the moment. He sits with her inside it. Present. Still. She finishes talking. He doesn't immediately pivot. And in that pause, that held, unhurried pause, she feels something she rarely feels in conversation. She feels met. Not advised. Not redirected. Not managed. Met. And that feeling becomes attached to him. She starts associating him, unconsciously, powerfully, with the feeling of being safe, of being seen, of being able to breathe. That is how emotional attachment actually forms. Not through grand gestures. Through small moments of genuine presence, stacked quietly over time. The tone beneath the words, there's one more thing that needs to be said here. Because these phrases can be used incorrectly. And when they are, they do nothing. Take your time, said with hidden impatience in the tone, is a lie she'll feel immediately. I understand, said dismissively, as a way to end the conversation rather than honor it, lands cold. The words only work when they come from a real place. When they reflect an actual inner state of patience, presence, and non-desperation. This is why the real work isn't memorizing phrases. The real work is becoming the kind of man who naturally inhabits these words. The man who has genuinely done enough internal work to not need every interaction to go a specific way. The man who has enough going on in his own life that he can offer space because he actually has space to offer. Older men tend to carry this more naturally, not because of age, but because of experience. Because they've been through enough to stop needing the outcome. Because they've lost enough to know what actually matters. Because they've been burned by their own impatience enough times to finally understand the value of being still. The phrases are the surface. The stillness underneath them is the real thing. And she can always tell the difference. What emotional restraint actually does. Let's talk about something that sounds counterintuitive. Because it goes against almost everything the culture tells men about how to attract women. Emotional restraint is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not playing it cool as a performance or pretending not to care as a game. Emotional restraint, real, grounded, internal restraint, is one of the most powerful signals a man can broadcast. And here's why. When a man reacts emotionally to everything, when he gets frustrated quickly, sulks when things don't go his way, needs constant reassurance, responds with urgency to every small uncertainty, he reveals something uncomfortable. He reveals that his emotional world is not under his own management. That external events, specifically her responses, have direct control over how he feels. That's not attractive. That's a weight she'd have to carry. And women instinctively know this, even when they don't have language for it. But the man who can hold himself steady, who can receive a cancelled plan, a short reply, a moment of her emotional complexity, and respond without reactivity. That man communicates something deep and wordless. I can handle hard things. My emotional world is mine. You don't have to manage me. That is incredibly attractive. Not because it's a strategy, but because it's genuinely rare. Because most men, regardless of age, are still, in some quiet way, looking to the woman they are interested in for emotional regulation. Looking for her response to tell them how to feel about themselves. The man who has stopped doing that stands differently. Speaks differently. His words land differently. And take your time, and I understand coming from that man, land like anchors. Not like performance. Like actual stability. Why he doesn't try to win. Here's the truth about why these two phrases work as deeply as they do. It comes down to one thing. He's not trying to win. And not trying to win is fascinating to a woman. Because every other interaction she has, almost every one, involves someone trying to win something from her. Her attention, her approval, her time, her feelings turned a specific direction. Even men who seem confident are often just performing confidence in order to win. The bravado is still about the outcome. The charm is still aimed at a goal. But the man who says take your time and actually means it, who says I understand without using it as a stepping stone to something else, is not playing toward a goal. He's just present, in the moment, without agenda. And that absence of agenda creates something magnetic. She can't categorize him as easily. She can't predict his next move because he isn't manufacturing one. She can't feel his need because he isn't broadcasting it. And all of that, the mystery, the stiffness, the lack of performance, makes her curious in a way she might not even fully understand. She thinks about what he said. She replays the interaction. Not because he was trying to create that effect, but because the interaction felt different from the rest. Quieter, more real. And different is memorable. Real is rare. And rare things pull at us long after the moment has passed. Attraction, in its deepest form, is not a lightning bolt. That's a myth the movies sold us. Real attraction, the kind that turns into trust, and trust into genuine emotional investment, is a slow build. It happens in accumulated moments. In small interactions that stack on top of each other over time, each one adding a little more weight, a little more meaning. And these two phrases, take your time, and I understand, are perfectly designed for that slow build. They are not designed to create immediate fireworks. They are designed to create a consistent emotional environment. One where she always feels a little more at ease with him than with anyone else. Where she always senses, even if she can't articulate why, that this is a safe place to be herself. And over time, that consistency does something that fireworks never could. It builds attachment. Not the anxious kind. Not the kind that comes from being chased and overwhelmed and swept up in intensity. The kind that comes from genuine trust. The kind that makes her want to be near him not because she's excited or confused or chasing a feeling, but because being around him feels good. Real. Grounding. That's what these words build, in the right hands, over time. Older men don't rely on clever lines. They don't rehearse speeches or construct elaborate strategies. They've been through enough to know that all of that effort aimed at the wrong thing just exhausts everyone involved. What they rely on instead is something much simpler and much more powerful. They've learned, through time and experience and enough painful lessons to fill several chapters, that the quality of their response in a difficult moment is more attractive than anything they could plan in advance. She cancels, they respond calmly. She shares something hard, they hold the space. She pulls back, they don't pursue frantically. And in all of those controlled responses, she reads the same thing over and over again. This man is stable. This man knows who he is. This man doesn't need me to perform for him. And he's not performing for me. And that reading, repeated enough times across enough interactions, becomes a feeling she trusts. These two words work not because they are magic, but because they remove the need to perform. And when the performance disappears, what's left is something real. Something she can actually respond to. Something she can actually trust. Attraction grows in the absence of force. Connection deepens when nothing feels manufactured. And the man who understands this, who can sit quietly inside that truth and let it guide how he speaks, is the man she keeps thinking about long after the conversation ends. What happens when you stop trying? So here's the question worth sitting with. The one that might shift something inside you if you let it land fully. What happens when you stop trying to impress her and start simply slowing everything down? What happens to the conversation? What happens to the dynamic? What happens to the space between what you say and what she feels? Most men will never find out. Because stopping the effort feels too risky. Because slowing down feels like losing ground. because staying quiet in a moment of tension feels like giving up. But the men who do find out, who try it once and feel the shift and watch how differently she responds, those men rarely go back. Because what they discover is that everything they were working so hard to create through effort arrives naturally through restraint. Less pressure, more presence, 2 phrases used at the right moment, and suddenly the entire emotional landscape of the interaction changes. She's not guarded anymore. She's not evaluating. She's not keeping score of who's trying harder. She's just there, present, interested, curious about who this man actually is. And that curiosity, the kind she generates herself, without being pushed toward it, is the beginning of something real. If you've been watching and something here resonated, something clicked, or something made you see a past interaction differently, that's the surface. There's much more underneath it. The psychology of female attraction goes deeper than 2 phrases. There are patterns, signals, invisible dynamics playing out in every conversation that most men have never been taught to see. And once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. So if this kind of insight is something you want more of, stay close. Drop a comment below. Tell me which phrase felt more powerful to you. Take your time, or I understand. And why? If this changed something in how you think, like the video. It helps more men find this kind of content. And if you want to keep going deeper, subscribe. Because we are just getting started.